I remember vividly the first day I met Minan. It was an autumn morning when yellow leaves covered the small street in the neighborhood. I was 7 years old, sitting on my front steps, watching a moving truck parked in front of the house next door. My parents said new neighbors were moving in, and I was curious if they had any children. Not long after, a pretty little girl stepped out of a car. Her long black hair was neatly tied back, her big round eyes sparkled like black gems, and her radiant smile made my heart beat faster. That was Minan, the girl who would become my best friend and first love throughout my childhood years. "Hi, I'm Minan," she said when she caught my curious gaze. "What's your name?" "I'm Hong," I mumbled in reply, feeling my cheeks flush. From that day on, Minan and I became close friends. We went to school together, played in the sweltering summer afternoons, and shared the little secrets of childhood. I liked the way Minan laughed, her laughter as clear as wind chimes. I liked how she was always ready to share the sweet candies her grandmother gave her. And I liked how she always listened to me talk about my far-fetched dreams. Years passed, and we entered adolescence together. Minan grew more and more beautiful, while I remained a skinny, awkward boy. My feelings for her also gradually changed. No longer just pure friendship, new and indescribable emotions began to stir. I vividly remember a summer afternoon in 8th grade, when we sat on the old swing in Minan's backyard. The afternoon sun shone through the maple leaves, creating shimmering streaks of light on her face. Minan was talking about a new book she had read, her eyes sparkling with excitement. I couldn't hear a thing, just lost in the pure beauty of my best friend. "Hey, are you listening to me?" Minan asked, lightly punching my shoulder. "Oh, yes, of course," I replied awkwardly, feeling my cheeks burn. Minan looked at me intently, then burst out laughing. "What are you thinking about? You look so strange." I wanted to say I was thinking about her, about how the sunlight mesmerized me as it shone on her silky black hair, but I didn't have the courage. Instead, I just shook my head and joked that I was daydreaming about dinner. That was the first time I realized I was in love with Minan, but it was also the first time I felt afraid of my own feelings. Could Minan sense it? Would she return my feelings? Or would that ruin our beautiful friendship? The high school years passed in a struggle between love and fear. I remained by Minan's side, her closest friend. We went through stressful exams together, enjoyed fun field trips, and supported each other through difficult times. But I never dared to confess my feelings. There were moments when I thought Minan might have special feelings for me too, like when she held my hand tightly as we watched a horror movie in the theater, or when she rested her head on my shoulder, falling asleep on the bus during a field trip. But those moments passed, and Minan continued to treat me as a close friend. In our final year of high school, as we prepared for university entrance exams and the next chapter of our lives, I had almost decided to confess my feelings to Minan. I didn't want to carry regrets when we parted ways to follow different paths. But then, at our class farewell party, I witnessed Minan and Tuan, the most handsome athlete in school, share their first kiss. My heart shattered. I quietly left the party, wandering the empty streets, letting the summer rain pour down on me. I don't know how long I walked, only that when I got home, I was soaked and chilled to the bone. The next morning, I came down with a high fever and had to be hospitalized for several days. Minan came to visit me, worriedly asking what happened, but I just lied that I had caught a cold from being in the rain. I couldn't tell her that it was my broken heart that had made my body so weak. After graduating high school, I decided to study abroad. Partly because I wanted to experience a new life, but mostly because I wanted to escape the memories of Minan. I thought distance and time would help me forget this unrequited love. During my years abroad, I tried to focus on studying and building my career. I met new people, dated a few girls, but never felt as deeply as I did for Minan. Whenever I thought of home, of childhood memories, Minan's image always appeared in my mind. 10 years passed like a gust of wind. I was 30 years old with a stable career and decided to return to Vietnam to develop my own company. I rented an apartment in the old neighborhood where I grew up. Everything seemed exactly the same as before. Only the people had changed. One autumn afternoon, as I was walking down the familiar street, I caught sight of a familiar figure. My heart nearly stopped when I realized it was Min-an. She was still as beautiful as ever, perhaps even more alluring with the beauty of a mature woman. Beside her was a tall man, presumably her husband. I stood frozen, not knowing whether to approach and say hello or quietly walk away. But then our eyes met. Min-an stopped, her eyes widening in surprise. "Hoang, is it really you?" Min-an exclaimed, her face beaming with joy. I nodded, trying to smile despite the ache in my heart. "Hi, Min-an, long time no see." We stood talking for a while, catching up on our current lives. I learned that Min-an had been married for 5 years and was working at an advertising company. She still lived in the old neighborhood, just a few blocks away from my new apartment. "I can't believe we're neighbors again," Min-an laughed. "You must come visit sometime." I nodded, promising to drop by when I had the chance. As we parted ways, I watched Min-an's figure fade into the distance, feeling a mix of sadness and regret well up inside me. 10 years had passed, yet my feelings for her remained unchanged. In the months that followed, Min-an and I saw each other more frequently. We reminisced about old memories, shared stories about our current lives. I tried to maintain some distance, reminding myself that Min-an was married, but every time I saw her I felt my heart beat faster, and old feelings resurfaced strongly. One evening, as I was working late at the office, my phone rang. It was Min-an, her voice trembling and full of tears. "Hoang, can you come pick me up? I don't know what to do anymore." Without hesitation, I agreed and drove to the address Min-an provided. It was a small bar on the outskirts of the city. When I arrived, I found Min-an huddled on the steps, her eyes red from crying. "What happened?" I asked worriedly, sitting down beside her. Min-an burst into tears, telling me about a fierce argument with her husband. He had suspected her of having an affair, even though Min-an was completely innocent. The argument had gotten so bad that Min-an had to leave, not knowing what to do. I hugged Min-an, trying to comfort her. "Everything will be okay," I said, though my heart ached to see the one I loved suffering like this. I took Min-an back to my place, made her a hot cup of tea, and listened as she poured out her heart. Through Min-an's story, I gradually understood that her marriage had been unhappy for a long time. Her husband was a controlling man, jealous and often suspecting Min-an without cause. "I don't understand why it's like this," Min-an sobbed. "I've tried my best to maintain our family's happiness, but maybe we're just not right for each other." I wanted to tell Min-an that she deserved better, that I would never treat her that way. But I knew this wasn't the right time. Instead, I just listened silently and comforted her. That night, Min-an slept over at my place, on the sofa in the living room. I lay in bed, tossing and turning, unable to sleep, thinking about Min-an's situation and the emotions surging inside me. The next morning, when I woke up, Min-an was already gone. She left a small note. "Thank you so much, Hoang. I'll go home and try to talk to him one more time." In the weeks that followed, I saw Min-an less often. She seemed to be trying to save her marriage. I respected her decision, even though it pained me. But then, one evening, my doorbell rang. When I opened the door, I saw Min-an standing there, her face streaked with tears, but her eyes full of determination. "I've decided to get a divorce," she said. "I can't continue living in an unhappy marriage anymore." I invited Min-an in, listening as she talked about this difficult decision. During this time, I had to suppress the secret joy in my heart, reminding myself that Min-an needed a friend, not a lover. Over the next few months, I stood by Min-an's side, supporting her through the difficult divorce process. We spent more time together, cooking, watching movies, or simply talking late into the night. Gradually, I saw Min-an's smile return, her eyes sparkling with joy like they used to. One evening, as we sat on my balcony, looking out over the city at night, Min-an suddenly turned to me, her eyes full of emotion. "Hoang," she said softly, "I have something to tell you." My heart beat faster. "What is it?" Min-an took a deep breath, then said, "I've liked you for a very long time, since we were in high school." I was stunned, not believing my ears. "Really? But why didn't you say anything?" Min-an smiled sadly. "I was afraid that if I said something, we wouldn't be friends anymore. And then when you went abroad to study, I thought I had lost my chance forever." I felt as if 1,000 emotions were swirling inside me: joy, regret, and even a bit of anger at the years wasted. "Minan," I said, taking her hand. "I love you too. I've loved you for a very long time, since we were children." And then, as if guided by an invisible force, we leaned towards each other. Our first kiss was sweet and passionate, as if we were making up for all the lost years. From that night on, our lives changed completely. We started dating, savoring every moment together as if making up for lost time. With each passing day, our love grew deeper. A year later, on an evening under a starry sky, I knelt before Minan and proposed. Tears of happiness rolled down Minan's cheeks as she nodded yes. Our wedding took place on a beautiful spring day. As I stood at the altar, looking into Minan's eyes, shining with happiness, I knew that all the years of waiting were worth it for this moment. 2 years after our wedding, we welcomed our first child, a beautiful baby girl with big round eyes just like her mother's. We named her Hope, as a reminder of the long journey we had taken to be together. Every time I see Minan holding our daughter, I feel my heart overflow with love. I know that this life, despite all its difficulties and challenges, has brought me exactly where I belong, beside the woman I have loved since childhood. Sometimes we still laugh about how shy we were back then. But then we realize that perhaps everything happened for a reason. The years apart had helped us grow, learn to love and appreciate each other more. Now, as we sit on the swing in our backyard, where we used to sit over 20 years ago, I hold Minan's hand and know that this is happiness. Not a perfect fairy tale, but a real love, with all its difficulties, challenges, and sweet moments. And when Hope runs up, asking her parents to tell her a story, we once again recount our love story. About the little boy and girl next door, about the years of waiting, and about how love brought us back together. Because sometimes, true love isn't love at first sight. Sometimes it's a love that has been nurtured over the years, tested by time and distance, only to finally blossom into the most beautiful flower. And when I look into Minan's eyes, I know that we will love each other forever, just as we have loved each other since childhood, pure, intense, and eternal. But every time I met her, I felt those old emotions resurface strongly. I knew I shouldn't have such thoughts, but my heart seemed unable to control itself. One evening, while I was working late at the office, I received a message from Minan. "Can you come over to my place? I need to talk." The tone of the message seemed off, making me worried. Without hesitation, I immediately left the office and drove to Minan's house. When I arrived, Minan opened the door with red, puffy eyes. She had clearly been crying. "What's wrong?" I asked, concerned. Minan pulled me inside and burst into tears on my shoulder. Through her sobs, she told me she had just discovered her husband was cheating. "He's been lying to me for the past 2 years," Minan said, her voice filled with pain. "I don't know what to do anymore, Huang." I hugged Minan, trying to comfort her. Inside, I felt a mix of emotions, heartbroken to see Minan in pain, angry at the man who had betrayed her, and a vague hope that I tried to suppress. "You don't deserve this," I said, gently stroking her hair. "You deserve to be loved and respected." Minan looked up at me, her eyes brimming with tears. "Thank you, Hong. I don't know what I'd do without you." We sat talking all night. I listened as Minan told me about her unhappy marriage, about the signs she had missed, and about the pain of discovering the truth. I tried my best to comfort and encourage her, even though inside I was torn between wanting to protect Minan and wishing to be with her. As dawn broke, Minan had calmed down considerably. "Thank you for being here with me last night," she said, holding my hand. "I think I'm going to file for divorce." I nodded, supporting her decision. "I'll always be here for you, whatever you need." In the months that followed, I became a strong support for Minan. I helped her find a lawyer, supported her through the divorce process, and was always ready to listen whenever she needed. Gradually, I saw Minan become stronger and more confident. One evening, about 6 months after Minan's divorce, we were sitting on my balcony, sipping wine and looking out over the city. The atmosphere was peaceful and intimate. "You know," Minan suddenly spoke up, "I used to like you a lot when we were in school." My heart nearly stopped. "Really?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Minan nodded, smiling. "Yes, but I thought you only saw me as a friend, so I never dared to say anything." I laughed, unable to believe my ears. "What a coincidence, I liked you back then too." We looked at each other, both surprised and a little embarrassed. Then Minan laughed, her laughter as clear as ever. "We were so silly, weren't we? So many years have passed." "Yes," I agreed, feeling my heart beat faster. "But perhaps we needed that time to grow up, to understand ourselves, and know what we really want." Minan looked at me, her eyes gentle. "So what do you want now, Huang?" I took a deep breath, deciding this was the time to bravely say what I had kept in my heart for so long. "I want you, Minang. I've always wanted to be with you from the first day we met until now. My feelings for you have never changed." Minang was silent for a moment, then she gently placed her hand on my cheek. "I feel the same way, Huang. I think I've always loved you, I just didn't realize it." And then, under the gentle moonlight, we shared our first kiss. A kiss that both of us had been waiting for 20 years. From that night on, everything fell into place. We started dating, rediscovering feelings that had been buried for too long. With each passing day, I fell more in love with Minan. She wasn't just my lover, but also my best friend, my companion, and the other half of my soul. A year later, during a picnic at the place where we used to play as children, I got down on one knee and proposed to Minan. Tears of happiness rolled down her cheeks as she said, "Yes." Our wedding took place on a beautiful autumn day, just like the day we first met. As I watched Minan walk towards me in her pure white wedding dress, I knew that all the years of waiting, all the pain and worry, were worth it for this moment. Now, as I write these lines, I'm watching Min-un holding our baby daughter in the next room. She's only 6 months old, with big round eyes just like her mother's. My heart is filled with happiness as I look at the two most important women in my life. Sometimes, I wonder what our lives would have been like if one of us had been brave enough to confess our feelings 20 years ago. But then I realized that perhaps everything happened exactly as it should have. We needed time to grow up, to experience life, to understand ourselves and the value of love. Whenever we talk about the past, we still can't help but laugh at how shy we were back then. But it's okay, because now, we're together. And that's the most important thing. Our love, despite going through so many ups and downs, will always be a beautiful fairy tale. A story of two close friends, loving each other since childhood, separating and then finding each other again. A story proving that true love, no matter how long it has to wait, will always win in the end. And when I look into Minan's eyes, I know that our story is still long. Because our love, like love in fairy tales, will last forever.